He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Hi, this is comedian and depressed alcoholic James Nokise, and you're listening to Eating Fried Chicken in the Shower, a podcast about headspace and happiness from my safe place, the shower, with fried chicken. This episode, I'm chatting to serial entrepreneur, public speaker, and the first guest to bring their own gown to the shower, Jenene Crossan. We'll chat about economics.
You've got all these companies that are acting in this way. You have a much more detrimental impact on the entire economy.
Endurance.
Resilience isn't a personality trait. It's a cup that needs filling.
And excellence.
My initial reaction, being completely crude, was you've got amazing but
Some of this will get a bit real. The language, the subjects. So make sure you're in a safe space with your comfort food. And join us. Eating fried chicken in the shower. We've never had an entrepreneur specializing in tech on the show.
Cool.
And we're really looking to monetize what we're doing here, because all I'm getting from this is fried chicken. So how will we go about improving the fried chicken model to become independent of the government money before they do the next budget?
It's funny because we used to, when the influencer space was all about trying to get people money and commercialize what they do. And of course, the terminology was always you can't eat lipstick, because everyone will try and send you lipstick to get but you can eat chicken.
Chicken. What chicken have we got? What chicken have we got?
So this is Karaage chicken, which I understand is from, was it Zulu? Zuzu in Mount Eden, which apparently is the best Karaage chicken in Auckland. And wait.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you bought Japanese mayo.
You have to have Japanese mayo, right?
Also, and just say for our viewers, if you're listening to this and you haven't watched it yet, Jenene has raised the stakes by being the first guest to bring her own robe. Because now I'm not just some creepy dude in a robe interviewing people. You got a robe too, and you colour match.
Which is more coincidental and perchance, as opposed to I went out of my way. So the robe is the robe that it is, which I recently got gifted on the back of I had a pretty serious operation a few months ago, and one of my husband's colleagues sent this to me, and I was like, oh my God, you're the best person in the world.
Great gifting. Also, I'm just going to point this out only because fans of my stand-up will appreciate that you are also in a all-pink suit.
Well, I'll probably end up taking a laugh for us to get hot, but yes, this is the all pink.
Yeah, which is awesome. Any fans of Goddamn Fancy Man will have enjoyed that particular moment. Let's get into this chicken.
Oh.
Is this business chicken? Is that what we're eating?
Business chicken. I like it. It's serious chicken.
Serious chicken. Is it good?
Really good.
All right, let's get them out. This is lovely. Now,
this is good.
I want to talk about the pressures that you would face in your job, because I think that's very interesting when we think of, and stereotypes as well.
Yeah.
Because I think you obviously know the pressures of your job, but I don't know if your general public, when they think of startup and entrepreneurs, as sort of freewheeling. They think because the
lifestyle.
The big examples, of course, are your Bransons and your Musk, and you think of these men who are just freewheeling all over, but. It's not quite as simple as that. Go ahead and go, I'm going to start a company. Off we go.
Well, the reality is that it is as simple to say I'm going to start a company and off we go. It doesn't mean it'll succeed.
Right.
You can, very easily register a company and off you go. But you're not wrong, and I think that's probably, it is one of the hard parts of doing it, is that people don't understand how many different elements there are in there that you have to get right all the time in order for it to be successful. And the definition of a success is an interesting one. I recoined that last year and I called it success, because I think that's what success asks of us in this space, is it requires to suck every part of it out of you first.
Yeah.
And it can just inherently just suck in general. So
could you briefly tell me what NZ Girl was?
NZ Girl was an online magazine, and we operated that for 18 years. It was a commercial model based off advertising, and then it morphed into creating Bloggers Club, which we were the first influencer agency. So we commercialised the likes of Jordan with How to Dad. Right. And I retired all of that with a nice, neat bow last year and the beginning of this year with Bloggers Club.
Fantastic. And what is Flossie?
So that is not a brief answer.
That's all right. I've got some more chicken.
Yeah, you do. So the short answer is Flossie is a software company that specialises in front-end UX technology. And what that means is that we have built really beautiful tools that customers can use to make bookings for hair and beauty appointments.
Wow.
In the New Zealand marketplace, that looks like a series of apps, so iOS and Android. You can download them onto your phone, and we integrate with dozens of different software systems to pull data out, and we retail those services in this app, and you can buy them within 30 seconds. So basically, you can make an appointment within 30 seconds in four clicks. Which is just awesome.
Is it exhilarating? Is there an exhilaration to it?
Absolutely. There's nothing more satisfying for me than coming up with an idea, seeing it through to execution, and having people use it, and then them repeating back to me just how great it does what I hoped it would in the beginning.
And you're a veteran of this. Actually, I mean, like, you know, in the nicest sense. Like you're not just someone who's
quite harsh lights.
But you know what I mean? You started up like what?
I was 20. Yeah, I'm not 20 anymore. Right. I know it's hard to believe. I'm 41 actually next month.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I started in stand-up when I was 20, and there's some instant parallels in terms of it. Like, you got to do it because you love it.
Oh, yeah.
And it will suck up your life.
Absolutely.
But then you keep going, and suddenly you don't feel that old, and everyone's looking at you like you're a veteran.
Well, it's funny, one of my best friends is Claire Chittham, and we speak a lot of the parallels in being an actor and doing what I do. Very similar. Yeah. There's a lot of things that you do that are in the very same space of you're continuously putting yourself out there for criticism and emotionally, and the investment required in what you're doing, the getting people to support and back you through this, and you know, just there's a whole variety of things, and there's just a very entrepreneurial spirit, I think, within actors, and also a very acting spirit and entrepreneurship in the way that you do need to kind of turn up and bring it, and you know, convince people. And
I remember we used to say in stand-up, with deep respect to my actor friends who were clicking on this link to keep me in business, we always said the difference was that actors will throw themselves fully into a project full of passion. Comedians always have one eye on the pay as well.
Yeah, interesting.
But it's when I hear that, if it's not too cheesy, is entrepreneurship sort of that blend of business practice and passion?
I'd like to think so, and it's certainly, I think the successful ones have to have that blend. If you don't have a business mind, you won't succeed in it, and then it becomes a hobby pretty quickly.
Right. Is it that first one? Is it all exhilaration, not much fear?
Well, I liken it a little bit to the kids going down the ski field.
Right.
You know, as an adult, you watch them go past you, and you're like, oh, don't hit me. But they don't think about falling over, of course, because you know they have no plans to. So I think, you know, creating a business as a kid, because it's you are at 20, is a little bit like that. You don't worry about the possibility of running out of money or not being able to feed yourself or any of that kind of stuff. And I now also reflect on the fact that I obviously had privilege within that, in the sense that I knew I could go and turn up at mum and dad's place and they would feed me if I needed to. They weren't going to get me out of any pickles. I had a mortgage already at 20 as well.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. Grant and I were pretty good at saving, and we were pretty hard workers. But again, we had the privilege of being able to get one of the parents to underwrite the mortgage, which was always the thing, right? Like they were the guarantors, that got us in. But we lived on baked beans for a long time.
And is there a bit of pressure when your parents get involved in like the mortgage and that? Like
oh god, yeah.
Yeah, because I know when my family back in the early arts days, they give you some cash, and we don't come from money, so I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, no, we don't come from money at all. So it was very, very much like you realise that this is our retirement that you're screwing with. Don't fuck it up.
Eating fried chicken in the shower. Always make sure to dress appropriate.
I wonder if you could speak to that, to the danger of putting yourself in a situation where you don't fit.
Oh, I'd drive them insane. I would have told them how to do everything all the time.
Yeah.
I've never worked for anybody. I mean, like since I was a kid, I've only ever worked for myself, and so I wouldn't be very good at being in a corporate organisation. I want to go too fast. I want to change too many things. And, you know, whilst I'm completely capable of hearing, no, we shouldn't do it like this, have you thought about that? And I know where I've done my own things wrong. I'm not so good when I hear other people say it all the time. So I get really frustrated with people who aren't able to kind of see how potentially there's another way to go about stuff. Because my whole world has been about getting out of your own way.
Right.
It's always been about how do we get there, how do we get there, how do we get there.
Can you elaborate on that, getting out of your own way?
Well, I think it's actually quite an important piece of, I think, from a mental health point of view. And I think it brings into so much of what we talk about within our own home as well. You know, we've got 3 girls, and so much of what we're trying to teach them is that really life is about being able to figure out how to get out of your own way. Because realistically, we tell ourselves stories, right? And we believe things to be true. And then a lot of people get quite stuck in that, and they're unable to move themselves from that. So Scotty, my husband, and I are it's probably the complete opposite of that as individuals, and you work really well together, and that we are both really comfortable with change. We're really comfortable with things moving all the time. We're also very comfortable with not being right.
Yeah. Is that rare in the business field, like being comfortable with not being right?
I think in entrepreneurship you have to be if you want to succeed. You actually have to be able to go, oh man, I got that wrong. Wonder how else I could go about it, and let your ego go.
Right.
So that's the centre of getting out of your own way, is you have to be able to get over yourself.
Isn't it like a philosophical opposite to fake it till you make it? Because I think when we think of entrepreneurship, and maybe this is just a generation I've grown up with, but you're always told, fake it till you make it,
Yeah. And look, there's an element of that that's valid in the sense, when I turned up at 20 into advertising agencies to get them to buy ads that were going to be on NZ Girl, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know ad agencies existed until that point. And I certainly didn't know there was any kind of hierarchy. I mean, I just bullshitly turned up in my pink suit.
Yeah, it's great. Big move.
Yeah, exactly. And told them what I had was the best thing since sliced bread, and they needed a part of it. And I wholeheartedly believed it to be true. So I guess it depends on where you see the line of fake it till you make it, right? Because I certainly was having to pull up a whole bunch of confidence and walk in there and do things that I didn't know how to do.
Yeah.
And so you could argue I was faking it, but I totally believed it was possible.
Why? I think I'm interested, definitely. You're 20 years old, like regardless of your situation, how do you find that confidence? Where does that confidence come in?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, because I think for me, that's probably always been my little superpower. And I think superpower is a really interesting concept for me. I think as you get older, you realise that superpowers are the thing we have to try and protect. Yeah. You can't have them all. You probably only going to get one. Yeah. Maybe be lucky you get a couple. But either way, they're yours to protect. And for me, being able to stand up in front of people who I don't know and tell them why I think what we've got is great, and actually not just be able to say that, but then I can walk that talk as well, and I can deliver it. And so I feel the confidence comes from, I know that I can get out of my own way. I can help other people get out of their own way to deliver a product. I know how to do that. I feel really great about being able to do that. It doesn't mean it's not hard. It doesn't mean it's not full of pressure, but I know how to do that. So that superpower gains traction over time. And so, of course, you can get to 40. We've had 20 years of experience with that, and I know what hurts that superpower, and I know what helps it. But it is what allows me to do what I do with Flossie on the other side of the world. I do a lot of travelling, and I stand on a lot of global stages as, tiny little entrepreneur from New Zealand.
What are the pressures that come with that for you? Because Flossie's a company. Yeah. It's not just you and a website.
No, God no. Yeah.
And so do you go into those big stages and feel that pressure, but then have the confidence to shield you from it, or do you just ignore the pressure?
I think if you ignore pressure, it probably smacks you in the butt later. So you have to actually acknowledge it. So part of it for me is recognising what's good pressure and bad pressure. Mm-hmm. So my co-founder in Flossie, Stephen Torrance, and I have our own set of philosophies within our business in the way that we want to run it, right? Mm-hmm. Because there's an unfortunate reality in the startup industry, which is a burnout culture.
Right. And
particularly when you're venture-backed and you've got other people's money in there, there's this enormous amount of pressure that you deliver not just a little bit of return on investment, a substantial return on investment. And that's really acutely felt. But of course that manifests for a lot of people as unless I'm working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, I'm not giving it my all. And so that's a really dangerous place. And I think Silicon Valley, really drove that mentality of, people sleep on the floors of the offices and
The nutrient shakes, that's what I was thinking of, the goo.
Yeah, exactly. We treat them like the astronauts that can't leave. That doesn't sound fun at all, and that doesn't actually, it's not sustainable, and of course you can't live your life like that.
But yeah, I think in New Zealand, we are not great with burnout culture.
Oh God, no. Yeah, because we say that means you weren't tough enough, you couldn't handle it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, listen to the news. I get it on the weekend. One of the rugby players, I can't remember which game it was, and he had split his head open, and blood was pouring from his head, and he played on. And the way they reported
What
was
a bloody legend.
You're like, health risk, not just to himself but to others. That seems just really daft. Anyway, so the philosophy that Stephen and I came up with is that we're going to run the startup the way that we want to do it, and the people who back us, need to buy into that. And if they don't have to back us. Simple as that, really. And I think we've proven our tenacity. Having been here 7 years and done what we have and got to where we are, we've proven the fact that we're not slacking off. It's just, we just have to protect each other. And so it's a strong part of my leadership within the business is looking after the team and making sure that they don't burn out. And this week is a really good example of that. We've got massive launches happening everywhere, and everyone's under a lot of pressure. I'm like, okay, cool. So you can have a massage, and you need to take a week off. And what can we do to just kind of come back down a peg or two? So actually, that nicely comes back around to the beginning of this. And so around the pressure, and for me, resilience is part of this conversation. I guess the lesson I've learned the hard way, because, they're the best lessons learned, right? Yeah. Is that resilience isn't a personality trait. It's a cup that needs filling.
Yes.
And if you don't protect it, it basically packs its bags and it fucks off. So and leaves you unable to deal with the pressure. So that's something that I've learned to get better at, and now I kind of get into the real nub of the philosophy I have around this. So all of this leads to, I believe, that my superpower is 2% of me.
Right.
And this 2% is what I have to protect. Right. Like 98% of everything else I do, pretty much somebody else could do.
Right.
You could hire extra people in to do if you wanted to. You could give somebody else a task to do. So much of what I do within there they could do. But there's a special 2% secret sauce that it's mine for now. And I'd like to think that I can teach somebody else that secret sauce ongoing, or identify somebody who has some similar secret sauceness, and I can bring our saucinesses together in that way. But for me, that protecting that, and for that looks like ensuring that, excuse me, man, Karaage chicken makes me burp.
I know. It's good.
It is good.
Just letting it all come out just brings it all out.
It's coming with a hot air. Is that what gets in the way of protecting that 2%? That's when I pile on so much pressure that I can't see it any longer. And so then I've worked out that the only way to protect that is to do the things around me. So that's like riding my bike. It's like spending time with my family. That's spending time with my husband. It's, we're not working ridiculous hours. It's connecting with friends. Connection is a huge part of all of that. Yeah. And then my 2% has a chance to flourish. And then I come back with brilliant ideas and, good leadership and all the things that are required. But when I'm not doing that, it gets swallowed.
Eating fried chicken in the shower, the trick is to not overthink it.
Because you've got flair. I think that's what, we haven't met before, Jenene, but I'm enjoying the flair. Is flair important to entrepreneurship?
I think so. I think particularly the kind of entrepreneurship that I do as well, where I work in a beauty tech industry, so it has a whole bunch of flair around it in the first place, right? And then on top of that, software technology, that has flair. And there's also a lot of people out there, so you got to stick out somehow. And it's not, I don't necessarily wear a pink suit to deliberately garner attention so much as prove the point that I don't really care about wearing a pink suit.
Is it like in the arts? Is it an expression of your character?
A little bit. I think it should actually, what it should say about my character is that I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
And because I'm not. I'm completely comfortable with being in the situation of being possibly the only person in Auckland that wears a pink suit. Or so it would seem. That's how I get treated when I'm here. But So I think flair is not something you can necessarily work on. I think I'm probably lucky in that's probably part of that 2% secret superpower source.
Yeah. And that helps with the fear as well. Does it help with, we talk about walk it off, which I guess is kind of tied to burnout. But when you've got a bit of flair and you fail, how does that help you? Does it help you?
Yeah. I guess for me, I spend time thinking about failure from a positive point of view. And I know we demonize it, right? But I think there's also an opportunity to use it the other way, which is the only way I've managed to get to here is because of all these things behind me, right? So I'm not scared of failing in that way, and I'm quite comfortable talking about it.
Yeah.
I think it scares most other people.
I think so. I think we tie it to self-worth, don't we?
Yeah.
Like I think there is a narrative that to fail is to decrease your worth.
Yeah, and yet I think that you actually increase it because you become so much more self-aware and cognizant of all the various parts of who you are.
Yeah, because, especially in the arts, we always say in stand-up, you don't know if you're actually going to be a stand-up until you have died on your ass.
Yeah.
Till you have created just this horrible vacuum in a room where you leave and people aren't even angry. They just want to check you're okay. Until you felt that just crushing void and go, yeah, I could give it another go.
Yeah.
But have you had that kind of crushing blow in your ventures? You don't have to name it, but I'm curious about how you responded to it.
So, yes and no. I think I've had the crushing end of failure, but I likened more as I found myself very much in a corner that I didn't feel like I could get out of. Right. And that corner has felt the most pressure I've ever felt in my life, and it has felt suffocating and isolating. And of course I did that whilst having IVF at the same time.
Oh, wow.
So, there's an existential crisis going on, getting closer to 40, TikTok. So I guess for me, from a pressure and failure point of view, I had a big melting pot cauldron of all of those things happening at the same time, and that I was at the pointy, nubby end of a startup, running out of cash, needing to very desperately show that it could continue, that it had reason to, that people should keep backing it, that we were making progress, which we were, but, far out. It was hard work in there. And doing that at the same time of figuring out what I wanted with my life and who I was and how I was going to deal with the grief of not being able to biologically have children and... there's all the stuff that goes with that, and it's so hard to explain, and all of those come into failure.
Yeah.
It was probably the beginning of last year, what I'd say would be the darkest, awful period of time in my life. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that pressure, that IVF pressure, I appreciate it more now because I'm heading towards 40, and so... when I'm younger, I kind of go, but as you get into that, when you see that window in your friends, in the people you care about, I don't think that's a pressure we talk about enough.
No, and the funny thing is, it's all about framing it right and getting comfortable with it. And I've kind of moved past that bit and go, God, it's such a privilege to get old. It really is. I know it's a sentence that's used a lot, but it really is.
That's a lovely sentiment.
Yeah. It's not just a sentiment, it's a truth.
Sorry.
It is a true thing. It is a privilege to get old because you think about the people who have died. It's better than the alternative, and
that's true.
And obviously, this is the basis of this conversation is the people who choose to opt out, right? I've had a couple of friends in the last couple of years, and it just blows my mind that, and for different reasons that they've got there, and some have been extraordinary mental health issues that have been long-standing their entire lives, and there's a part of me that goes, oh God, please that they're at peace themselves.
Yeah.
And it's that's a hard conversation to have in New Zealand.
That is.
We don't have that conversation at all.
No. As a survivor of suicide myself, I always point back to when people ask, I just go, it's just a lot of psychological pain. And I look back on my two attempts are very different from each other, but I look back and I go, the only thing that's really similar is this massive amount of psychological pain.
That's I think, and you just want to get away from it.
Yeah.
I think that if everybody I've ever spoken to about it would say it's the same thing. It's an interesting position to be in. And I have openly talked about it. It's fascinating coming back to talk about it again after trying to kind of close the window and talking about it for a while, because I sort of felt like every person I was running into was going, "Are you okay?"
Oh,
And
yeah,
like, for the
yeah,
fucking
yeah.
love of God, enough of the "Are you okays?" Like, and especially with the head tilt and the eyes that go with it.
Do you get the other one where now you've spoken about it publicly, people want to come and talk to you about their things?
You know, and I'm really happy that people feel comfortable doing it, because that's the point.
Yeah.
So the story basically goes that how I outed myself in all of this is I had read an article by some person in the States who I didn't know, and I happened to, within my Twitter feed, seen this link, and I clicked on it because the headline read how raising $2 million in funding really went, and I went, I had a look at that, and then basically by the end of reading her article, I was bawling my eyes out, because she'd been incredibly vulnerable and honest about the fact that it was one of the hardest things she's ever had to do in her life, and it was incredibly difficult and pressure filled, and in all sorts of ways it just about broke her. And I had been writing, because I love writing, and I had been pulling together these things. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. I sort of figured out one day I might write a book. Too small a town to really write what I want to write. Yeah. I know where all the bodies are buried. So I've seen that aside. I had started writing, and so I remember sitting there and I think, I'm just going to, polish that off, right. And it took an hour, basically, from reading hers to publishing mine was an hour. Yeah. And mine was entitled, How Raising $5 million Over 13 Rounds of Funding Nearly Killed Me. My own fault for sensationalising my own headline, because, of course, it gave everybody liberty to do the same. And what I talked about within that, it was the pressure I had felt over a long period of time to getting to this place. And so I'd found myself after, pretty much 20 years of doing startups to be on this pedestal as considered a superhero of the startup space, afraid to fail. Right. And that if I failed, basically, if Flossie failed, I failed. Right. And so for me, if my business failed, I was doomed, and I didn't know how to handle that. And of course, you add then the layers of what we talked about, IVF and other people's money and running out of cash and all the other things that go with that. Yeah. And then I had a bunch of things that were just not healthy around me, not helping things. And I didn't have some good advisors. I had some pretty poor ones, and people not necessarily looking at my best interests. I'm a mother that looks after everybody else's all the time, and there was no one really doing that for me. And I just got to a really dark point, and to be honest, all it was is when I just remember lying on my bathroom floor, crying my eyes out, lining up the sleeping pills. I had no intention of taking them. I was threatening myself. It was probably more of an empty threat to myself, which some people take a bit further as well. And I wasn't in that space. Of course, that nonetheless becomes quite a sensationalist part of the story, which was in this blog that I had written, and I talked about how I resolved that. And so I blew my corner up, and what it was publishing this article. Yeah. And so I published it, and then I was bawling my eyes out. I was on my office floor at home, and I suppose I should tell my husband about writing that. He's in China at the time, gets this text message from me and just goes, okay. And I felt very exposed, I felt very raw, I felt very judged, and I likened it to finding yourself naked in the town square, but realising that I had walked there voluntarily throwing all my clothes off. It was really hard on Scotty because he hadn't volunteered to take his clothes off, and I threw them off for him, and everybody kept coming up to me, "Are you okay?" And he hates that. So that was really hard. And then out the other side of that, of course, came the light. And what that meant is that the people who weren't with me were against me. They were gone. And that was great. And I was able to, with a bunch of people, get out of my life. And it created really awkward but courageous conversations. And then this newness happened. And that newness was that I had thrown myself off my pedestal. I had license to be whoever I wanted to be. I could do it however I wanted. I was no longer afraid of failing within that. I'd separated myself from my business. I'd taken back ownership of myself, and I'd opened myself up to conversations with people in a way that I'd never done before. And suddenly I felt connected, and I resolutely believe that connection is the antidote to isolation, and that is what creates at the end, right? We feel so isolated. We're in our corner on our own. No one understands it.
Yes. No, exactly. And you are in the right place to be talking about sitting on a bathroom floor, crying, looking at...
Eating fried chicken in the shower, we're not here to judge, we're just here to share a meal.
I mean, do you feel lightened from
Oh,
this?
I felt infinitely like the weight of the world had been taken off my shoulders. I think it's an interesting one I have to protect as well, because it got sensationalised a little bit after that.
Yes.
Various media pick it up, they give it their own headline, and then suddenly before I know it, anyone that ever researches me, that's the first thing they find out. And it's not ideal when you're trying to convince international clients to back you for a fairly substantial amount of money to do substantial things, and they go research you, and the first thing they see is blah 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 on the bottom of her floor. I'm like, yeah, no, that probably looks a bit crazy.
Yeah, no, I have the same thing with my alcoholism. There's an article out there, we won't say who by, but it's pretty high on the Google search list.
Yeah,
and it does, especially
it's confronting.
And I think especially when you've spoken openly from a place
of integrity and love.
Exactly. To have that happen. How do you, in the now, how do you mentally cope with that frustration?
Yeah, well, actually, to be honest, I've reached out to each of them and asked them to do so, and I've gone from that same place and said, this, every time I see it makes me feel not great. And actually, I have kids who research me as well, and they have friends who do the same, and I'd like them to not be triggered all the time as well. So can we figure out to make this more positive rather than sensationalist? And I'm happy for these conversations to still be had, and I'm happy for them to be part of my story. I'm not trying to hide from that. I'm just asking that we create a little bit more sensitivity around it than potentially has been applied.
I think that's the least that can be done.
Yeah.
You had your moments. You had you had that dark moment, but you didn't go, well, I've got to quit this. You're still going. You're still going strong. So what would you say to people who
change the game plan?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Because it's not about not doing it, well, unless it's not making you happy.
Right.
But for me, it wasn't about that. I wasn't happy with how I was doing it. That's what had to change. So I had to change my game plan around.
What's some stuff you've done to change that up?
So I think by just being really honest and real about it is probably the starting point, right?
Yeah.
And continuing to honour that conversation is critical, and holding myself and others in my team accountable for that same way, because lots of them are their own worst enemies of working really, really ridiculous hours and not switching it off and never feeling like they've achieved. And because this is the kind of business, the reality is there's always more to be done.
Yep.
So you're not going to be able to get to the end of the day and go, tick, done, start fresh tomorrow. There's always more.
Yeah.
So, I feel very strongly about protecting everybody in that space and then leading from the front on doing it and showing them that I don't do really long hours any longer. I have a balance in my life that's required, and that is so that I can bring the best of me to the table.
Get out of your own way.
Get out of my own way, exactly. Get on my bikes, go to the kids' sports, have date night with the husband, hang out with my friends.
Date nights?
Yeah.
You lucky son.
I know. But I'm interested to how to do date night when we live, 14,500 kilometres apart from each other. I think that's going to be a bit more challenging.
I think sometimes when you've got the kind of job that you have, especially where you got to keep going.
There's no resting.
Yeah. And so, we've done this. It must be great. Yeah, but I've got to get the next thing done. You actually do have to pause, don't you?
Yeah. It goes back to that conversation around making sure you're protecting your team, because otherwise they get burnt out. Because you are continuously always on, going. And actually go, stop, take a moment, and let's breathe. We did great.
Yeah.
Now let's move forward.
Because what you're talking about is good business practice, right?
Absolutely.
And do you think that
Sustainable
business practice? So in terms of mental health, do you see that as being something that affects the economy? Because I don't know if that's a sentence it's one of those sentences that we don't necessarily process. Mental health affecting the economy.
Well, it does, because, if I think about what would happen at a micro scale within my business, if I let that go too far, right, I would lose core staff members. And so that turnover affects a business negatively. There's plenty of science and research that backs that point up. Hiring people and getting new people into your organisation is really expensive. Apparently costs like 3 times what you might pay someone.
Right.
It costs you that to be able to bring someone new into your business. So that at a micro level is impact. It has a macro effect as well. So all of these, if you've got all these companies that are acting in this way, you have a much more detrimental impact on the entire economy. We're losing good people all the time in this country. We've openly talked about my friend Mark Singleton, who committed suicide 2 years ago, who was the head of Cotton On. 4,000 employees, and that the negative effect on so many people was extraordinary. And my heart, it hurts thinking about all of that. And I adored him. He was such an amazing man, and I wish that we could have protected him. But I do believe that if we'd had the right services in place, that we might have been able to catch him better than too many people were having to be his catchers who are not trained, who are not able to be there all the time. We need the professionals to be able to help with that. So I think there's a disastrous effect on our economy at an individual level, at a company level, at a community level. There can't be any positives that are coming out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd like to someone try and argue the positives of the mental health industry. There can't be any, and unfortunately it's not an industry, and yet it kind of actually needs to be. So we have a therapist we go see. We've proactively gone to see one in advance as I'm moving to Paris in January. Which is pretty exciting, but I'm taking our 17-year-old with us, so Scotty's feeling very much like I said, I'm going, I'm taking.
Yeah.
But we've been proactive about having this conversation, because all these things lead to having moments of crises and,
But again, it's that good business practice, because I often think what you're talking about, holidays, therapy, they're not just...
nice to haves.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be privileged.
They should be part of the job. Do you think that's a definite dialogue, that they are actually as much a part of the job as the 9 to 5 or whatever your insane hours are?
Yeah, exactly. No, I try really hard not to work in insane hours, except for the fact that I work in 2 time zones. And so I have to tell myself to check out so that I don't worry about my email overnight, because otherwise I'm aware of they're awake doing stuff, and vice versa, no matter where I am. But what a privilege that is, that for me, and then I feel there's guilt that is attached to that I get to run that in my life like that I get to go and proactively spend money with a counsellor to have a conversation about something that I'm worried might happen. Proactive is awesome, but it shouldn't be a privilege. It should be something that you should be able to go to the doctor as part of our healthcare system and talk about what is going on in your head in the same way as what's going on in your throat or any other part of your body. And the public health system has paid for a lot going on in here, as if I give, I had a hysterectomy this year, so there's a lot missing. Yeah. So many jokes on that, but you probably shouldn't go there.
Whatever makes you feel comfortable. You're right.
Yeah.
Eating fried chicken in the shower, perfect for home, holidays, and everything in between.
Do you think, in terms of mental health, do you think that the business sector, your sector, is improving in its conversations, or is there...
Slowly, but surely. I think it is a little bit too much topical at the moment. Yeah. I certainly felt last year I got rolled out a lot.
Hey, at least we
quick,
fed you, man.
We need someone with mental health problems. Jenene will do. Come over here. Jenene, can you just talk about it and scare everybody into having to do better health and safety policies around mental health well-being?
And of course, you don't want to be the frightening person as well. No, I've had that, and it's like, what do you do? I try and be joyful. And it's like,
as a general rule, I'm a really happy person. Yeah, that's how I roll. I always have been. And the stigmas around that are just huge, which I'm sure you're more than attuned to, and people don't know how to distinguish between all the varietals in here. Like they assume that therefore you've been suicidal your whole life. Yeah. You've only just now told everybody else about it. Yeah. As opposed to, for me, it was very situational. I was in a really shitty situation that I allowed to become a really shitty situation. And, that's something I take responsibility for. And now I'm taking responsibility to take control of that and for the people around me so that never ever happens again. And that also goes to the kids in my life. Every night this week, we're taking the kids out individually for dinner at a place of their choice. It's a little bit expensive, but I'm not going to be here around for a while, so we're sort of figuring we're spending all the money at one time. And that's because, we're aware of there's a lot of change in our house. I'm not going to be here as much. How do they feel about that? What are they excited about? What are they worried about? Maddie, who's our middle child, turns to us halfway through dinner last night, and she goes, I'm so pleased you decided to do this. It feels really good. And that's the kind of family we want to have, where we can have really honest, raw conversations about where we're at.
Yeah.
You know, how are you really feeling?
Yeah. No, my father did something similar because I tell him in the traditional artist way through my work.
You make jokes about it. My parents love when I write about them.
Like, look, this is it's for my work. It's for my work.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there, and we do this for everyone, is there anything else that you'd like to share in the shower while you're here?
Gosh, there's so many subjects.
Yeah, go to town.
We have all day.
Yeah, we've got some chicken at least.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's such a broad question because there's always things to be shared. I feel very strongly that so much of these things are interrelated to each other, and we're really, I think, what we're guilty of in New Zealand particularly is putting into buckets of almost a silo as opposed to seeing how it all comes together. And so that's where I talk about this philosophy of getting out of your own way, because I was a keynote speaker at the Foodstuffs conference in Queenstown on Friday, and that was my message to them, to 350 New World and Pack and Save owners, basically the people with all the money. But there's a lot of reason for them to be worried about what's going to be happening next in their space, because there's lots of changes, and being comfortable with change is really crucial. But actually being comfortable with change goes to the basis of almost every problem we face, isn't it? In every part of our lives. And I don't know if we talk about that enough, because it's the basis of the conversation around climate change, around kids, around innovation, just and mental health, and all this stuff comes to change,
right?
And how you are okay or not okay with it, and then so much of that then comes back down to ego,
right?
And I think that's probably the one I end up spending a lot of time talking with friends about, is what are the things that they have told themselves to be true, and then they hang their hats on, and then they've just kept going down that path as what they know about themselves, and how many of them have really challenged themselves to be okay with it not necessarily being what they really are, or who they really are.
And so you think part of the conversation moving forward is about us being able to do that introspection on our egos, not being afraid to see what's underneath that initial facade.
Or even asking it loud. So the husband was on a retreat for a work thing recently, and he sends me a text message. Is this an R16?
It's whatever you need it to be. It's a mental health podcast, so we always put the right. This episode contains
triggers of.
If you are married to Jenene, you may wish to not watch this.
Especially if you're the third husband. Sorry.
That Porsche really worked. That Porsche really worked, didn't it?
It really did. Normally it's in reverse. The guy gets the Porsche towards the girl.
I love it. Pink suit, big Porsche.
Yeah, not anymore. It kept breaking down. I couldn't afford to keep it. I had to sell it. Anyway, so he sent me a message just saying, "Why are we friends?" And can I have some context? He said, "I've been asked as part of this thing that we're doing to ask the people who are closest to me what are the reasons that you're friends with me." My initial reaction, being completely crude, was, "You've got amazing but."
And you don't want that to be recorded down? That is an amazing compliment to give to national radio. There are partners listening to this now, just going up to them, like, "Can you just listen to this? Can you listen to what she just said? Why aren't you saying that? Why aren't you saying that in public?"
I'm just now thinking about my Google rankings.
They're going up off this. They're going up off this.
Amazing how comfortable you can get in the shower. But anyway, he said, "Well, I think it's something I can share with the group." And I said, "Yeah, it's probably best you don't share that with the group." But where was I going with this? Oh, right, yeah. And so anyway, what I really loved about this thing that they were doing is they were trying to get each of the individuals to hear this feedback about themselves, both the good and the bad, and be able to take that on board and figure out, some sort of this sort of stuff. And I just don't know if we do that enough as individuals. I think we've become quite around on things. So, I encourage people, to openly, as scarily as it is, embrace finding out the good, bad, and the ugly, and seeing if you can help that make you pave through the crap to get out the other side.
What's the old saying? Do the mahi, get the treats.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
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 That's cool.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Jenene Crossan,
Yeah.
thank you very much for coming into the show.
Absolute pleasure.
Eating fried chicken. My regards to your husband.
Never gonna forgive me.
Are you kidding? You're getting the best Christmas present.
Eating Fried Chicken in the Shower was produced by Charlie Bleakley and presented by me, James Nokise. The engineer is Blair Stagpool. The executive producers are Justin Gregory and Tim Watkin. Subscribe to our podcast however you just found this podcast. Or if you're listening on the radio, go to RNZ's podcast page and look for the chicken. And when you're rating us, only give us 5 stars. Remember, more stars, more chicken. If you want to share your safe space or comfort food, tweet me at James Nokise. If you need support, text 1737. Or for more resources on mental health, check the Fried Chicken webpage on the RNZ website. Whatailava Matewa.
Here at RNZ, we want to continue to deliver independent, high-quality content for all New Zealanders, and we're keen to hear from you. So we've set up a new research community called Your Media Matters. It's a place where you can share your views about program or content ideas, podcasts and topical issues. We'd love you to join. To sign up, head to rnz.co.nz/yourmediamatters.